I waited the whole day, checking my phone again and again, hoping to see his name pop up. A message, a call, anything. But there was nothing. No notification, no good morning, not even a simple hey. And the worst part was, I knew exactly what day it was. But he didn't. Or maybe he just didn't care enough to remember. I kept telling myself to stay calm. Maybe he was planning something. Maybe he was going to surprise me later. Maybe he was just pretending it was a normal day before doing something special. I kept making excuses for him, lying to myself just to protect what I was feeling. But then evening came, and still nothing. That's when it hit me. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was priority, and I wasn't one anymore. We had been together for 3 years. 3 years of memories, late-night conversations, I love yous, and promises about the future. Promises that suddenly felt very small. I'm Jessica. And this was the day I realized I had been loving someone who slowly stopped choosing me. I even wore his favorite dress that day. The one he once said made me look too good to be around other people. Funny how people change. Now he didn't even notice whether I existed or not. I kept looking at the clock. 6, 7, 8. Every hour felt heavier. Every minute felt louder. And then finally, at 9:12 p.m., my phone lit up. My heart skipped. I smiled without thinking. I opened the message quickly, just hopping. Hey, I'll be late tonight. Work stuff. That was it. That was my anniversary. Reduced to one dry message with no meaning behind it. I stared at the screen, reading it again and again, waiting for another message to follow. Something more, something real, but nothing came. No, I miss you. No, happy anniversary. No, I'll make it up to you. Just silence. And in that exact moment, something inside me didn't break, it changed. I didn't cry. I didn't call him. I didn't remind him what day it was. Because suddenly, I didn't want to be remembered like that. I stood up slowly, walked to the mirror, and just looked at myself for a long time. And I asked myself one simple question. If he can forget you this easily, why are you still holding on this tightly? That question hit harder than anything else, because I didn't have an answer. And that's when the idea came. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet thought in my mind. If he can forget something this important, I'll give him something he will never forget. Before I tell you what I did next, let me ask you something. Have you ever waited for someone who didn't even realize you were waiting? Just think about that, because that night I didn't text him. I didn't argue. I didn't react. I just started planning, quietly, carefully. And what I planned changed everything. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because I was crying, but because I was thinking. And the more I thought, the clearer everything became. It wasn't just about one forgotten anniversary. It was about all the little things he had slowly stopped doing. The good morning texts that disappeared. The calls that became shorter. The way he stopped noticing the small details about me. I had been holding onto the version of him that didn't exist anymore. And somehow, I was the only one still trying. The next morning, I woke up differently. Not sad, not angry, just clear. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for him to choose me. I was choosing myself. When he finally came home later that day, he acted like nothing had happened. He dropped his keys, sat on the couch, and casually asked, "How was your day?" I looked at him for a second, really looked at him, and it hit me. He genuinely didn't remember. Not even a little bit. And that hurt more than anything else. But instead of reacting, I smiled. Calm, normal, almost too normal. "Good," I said. "It was a good day." He nodded, scrolling through his phone, completely unaware of what he had just lost. And that's when I knew my plan was already working. I didn't bring it up. Not that day. Not the next. I didn't remind him. I didn't argue. I didn't even act distant. I became better. I started focusing on myself. I woke up early, took care of my routine, started going out more, talking less, laughing more. And suddenly, he started noticing. Not the way he used to, but enough to feel something was off. "Did something change?" he asked one night. I smiled again. "No, why?" He didn't answer, but I could see it. That slight confusion, that small shift in his behavior. And for the first time, he was the one paying attention. Days passed, then a week, and still I said nothing about the anniversary. Not a word. Until one evening, we were sitting together, and I casually said, "Oh, by the way, I got you something." He looked up, surprised. "For what?" I paused for a second, just long enough. Then I said, "You'll see." He laughed it off, thinking it was just a random gift. But it was, because what I had planned wasn't just a gift. It was a moment that would make him replay that forgotten day over and over again. And this time, he wouldn't forget. Before I tell you what I gave him, let me ask you something. Have you ever stopped chasing someone just to see if they would turn around? Think about that, because sometimes silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. And I was just getting started. I waited a few more days before giving him the gift. Not because I wasn't ready, but because timing matters. The right moment can say more than 1,000 words ever could. By then, he had started noticing the change in me more clearly. I wasn't asking where he was. I wasn't checking his phone. I wasn't even trying to start conversations the way I used to. And that silence, it was bothering him. "Are you okay?" he asked one evening, looking at me a little too carefully. I smiled. "Yeah, I've just been thinking about a few things." That answer stayed with him. I could see it. Because when you stop reacting, people start wondering. And that's exactly what I wanted. That night, I brought out the gift. It wasn't wrapped in anything fancy, just a simple box. Clean, plain, almost harmless. "I told you I got you something," I said, placing it in front of him. He looked confused but curious. "What is this for?" I didn't answer right away. I just nodded toward the box. "Open it." He laughed a little, like it was nothing serious. But as he opened it, that smile slowly disappeared. Inside the box was a photo, a picture of us from our first anniversary. We were smiling, happy, close, real. On the back of the photo, I had written one sentence. "You forgot this one too." He froze completely. I watched his face change in seconds. Confusion, realization, guilt, and then silence. Heavy silence. "That was a few days ago, wasn't it?" he said quietly. I didn't respond, because now he remembered. Not because I reminded him, but because I made him feel it. "I'm sorry," he said, looking down. "I didn't realize. I've just been busy." And I stopped him. "Don't explain it," I said softly. "Just understand it." He looked at me, confused. "Understand what?" I took a deep breath. Not angry, not emotional, just clear. "That forgetting something important doesn't happen in one day," I said. "It happens slowly, when someone stops caring the same way." That hit him. I could see it, because for the first time, he wasn't defending himself. He was thinking, and that was the real gift. Not the photo, not the message, but the moment where he finally saw what I had been feeling all along. "Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to show someone your pain because they couldn't understand it any other way?" Think about that, because sometimes people don't realize your value until they feel your absence. And I wasn't done yet, because what came next changed everything between us. After that moment, everything felt different. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy. He didn't say much after reading that message. He just sat there, holding the photo, like he was trying to go back to that version of us. The one where things were simple. The one where he actually noticed me. "I messed up," he said quietly. But for the first time, those words didn't hit me the same way. Because it wasn't just one mistake. It was a pattern. Days of distance. Weeks of silence. Months of slowly losing me without even realizing it. And now he finally saw it. But the real question was, what was I going to do with that? That night, he tried harder. He sat closer. He asked more questions. He even put his phone away, something I hadn't seen him do in a long time. "Let's go out tomorrow," he said. "I'll make it up to you." I looked at him and smiled, but not the same way as before, because I wasn't waiting for him anymore. "I don't need you to make it up to me," I said calmly. That confused him. "What do you mean?" he asked. I paused for a second, choosing my words carefully. "I mean, I already understood what I needed to understand." He went quiet, and that silence said everything, because deep down he knew this wasn't about dinner plans. This wasn't about fixing one missed day. This was about everything he had slowly stopped doing. and everything I had finally stopped tolerating. Over the next few days, he tried even more. Texts during the day, calls at night, small efforts that should have felt good, but somehow didn't. Because when something breaks slowly, you don't fix it instantly. And I had already crossed a line inside myself. A quiet one, the kind you don't talk about, the kind where you stop expecting and start accepting the truth. Let me ask you something. Have you ever reached a point where you stopped being angry and just became done? Because that's where I was. Not heartbroken anymore, not confused anymore, just clear. One evening, he looked at me and said, "You've changed." And I smiled again. "Yeah," I said. I finally noticed things I was ignoring before. He didn't reply because there was nothing left to argue. And for the first time, he wasn't the one in control of where this was going. I was, and what I decided next was something he truly never expected. By the end of that week, I already knew what I was going to do. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I finally understood something I had been avoiding for a long time. You can't force someone to value you, and you shouldn't have to remind someone to care. That night, I sat down across from him, calm, quiet, certain. He could feel it. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice slightly tense. I looked at him, not with pain this time, but with clarity. "I think we both know this isn't about the anniversary," I said. He didn't interrupt, because deep down, he knew exactly what I meant. "It's about everything that came before it," I continued. "The way things changed, the way I kept trying, and you slowly stopped." He looked down, and for the first time, he didn't try to defend himself. "I didn't realize it was this bad," he said quietly. And that was the moment it became clear. He didn't realize, because I had been the one holding everything together. And once I stopped, everything started showing. I took a deep breath. "I don't want to be in something where I have to remind someone to love me," I said. That hit him harder than anything else. "Wait, are you saying you want to leave?" he asked, his voice shaking a little. I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I wanted him to understand. "I'm saying I already left, slowly, while you were forgetting me." Silence, heavy silence, the kind that doesn't need words. He looked at me like he was finally seeing everything clearly, but a little too late. "I can fix this," he said quickly. "I'll change, I promise." I shook my head gently. "It's not about changing now," I said. "It's about what didn't matter enough for you to change before." That was it. That was the moment everything ended. Not with shouting, not with tears, but with truth. "Let me ask you something. Would you stay with someone who only realizes your value when you're already gone?" Think about that, because I had already made my decision. I stood up, walked to the door, and for the first time in a long time, I felt light, not because I lost him, but because I finally chose myself. And the gift I gave him, it wasn't the photo, it wasn't the message, it was the realization that he lost someone who never would have forgotten him. And that's something he will never forget.